I'm so excited right now because we're in the zeitgeist. We're living out the moments of WandaVision as it comes out. And because of that, because I've made these videos that I've made talking about my reactions for the first and second episodes, it means that people are responding and we're all talking about the same thing. And this is one of my favorite things about watching TV shows or reading books or watching movies, is the discussion around the thing. And I was glad that WandaVision was a thing that everybody was watching that we could talk about. I'm excited to talk about it. Let's dig into it because I already have 2 videos about WandaVision. This is going to be my 3rd video about it. It's going to be reflecting on what we know. It's going to be reflecting on my thoughts and trying to clarify some of my thoughts. It's going to be responding to your guys' comments on my videos to try to express my intention a little bit clearer, as well as like better flesh out my thoughts, I guess. First of all, just in case, this is going to have spoilers for the MCU. I'm going to be talking about things that have already happened in the MCU. I'm going to be talking about things from the first 2 episodes. So just in case you didn't know, I'm going to be talking about spoilers for the MCU. Now, one thing I want to praise that I didn't really talk about in those previous videos is let's talk about how Marvel has this ability to use the superhero film trappings to make different types of movies. That's something that a lot of people have pointed out with the last numerous, especially the last 2 eras of the MCU, is that a lot of these different movies technically fit into different subgenres, even if they're superhero movies. You have like your heist film, like Ant-Man. You have your spy thrillers, like Captain America, Winter Soldier. These movies, a lot of them fit into different genres in different ways, and they're trying to, explore those elements. You have your more like sci-fi comedy, Guardians of the Galaxy. It's awesome that Marvel is using their creative ability and their money to do things that are, while somewhat safe on some regards, creatively interesting in other regards. And so that's where WandaVision fits in, right? Because it's this weird show that has this strange presentation mode of being this black and white sitcom homage. And something that I don't think I did in my previous videos enough is talk about how it's really awesome that they are trying to take some risks, explore something different. This is not what anyone would have thought of if they would have thought about a superhero television show. And it seems like they are putting a lot of time and effort into trying to get elements of the show, the camera angles. They're putting a lot of effects into the shots to try to get it to look like the television show for the eras that we're seeing now. It's been like a 50s and a 60s era sitcom. Even the special effects that they use for these shows are like meant to be evocative of the special effects of something like Bewitched or I Dream of Jeannie or Is My Favorite Martian? That was a show back then, or it was later, but you know what I'm talking about. I think that there are elements of that are great. And I think they are accomplishing a lot of awesome work in those aspects. Also, in my previous discussions of the show, I did not spend enough time saying that Elizabeth Olsen has done an excellent job with her acting in these shows and having to kind of switch out her different types of performances, where like 1 minute she'll be performing in era and then another moment she'll have to be pulled out with something leaking in, as some people have started putting it. And Olsen is doing a great job in her portrayal there. Also, I want to say that Paul Bettany has been doing an excellent job, both comedically and also just like more, not, I guess it's all kind of comedic. He's been doing a great job filling in his role in the show as well. I think that there has been a lot of craft and care put into a lot of these interesting elements that are creative that I didn't spend enough time mentioning before. So now that that's out of the way, let's talk about the comments that we've gotten on the videos that I posted so far. The first thing I need to address that was mentioned in a ton of comments was actually just my bad, and I did address it a little bit in the video for the second one, but I want to make sure and say this on video record. I watched these episodes one at a time, and then I filmed the videos one at a time. So when I watched the first episode and I made the first video, I had not seen the second episode. Thus, there are so many answers or contradictions to what I thought, like immediately proven wrong. And the frustrating part about it to me was that I did film those videos in the same day, but I did record video 1 without having seen video 2. So there are so many comments on the first video that are explaining things that are clearly explained in the second episode that I just didn't know yet. It was my hot take. I made a mistake there because the episodes were released at the same time. I should have realized that everybody is going to watch all that's available before looking for additional content. They weren't going to watch the one stop. That's my bad. But the nice thing about that is I did get my real-time thoughts, and you did get to see my postulating get proven wrong immediately, as many people mentioned in the comments. Another interesting comment that I got from Ryan on the first video was that for people that only know the MCU, there's going to be a lot of confusion, maybe a little bit of apathy, which is how I kind of felt after the first episode. But he said that for fans of the comics, there is all kinds of awesomeness happening, a lot of like mind explosions. And so I am curious. I'm going to be looking up what comics relate to this show. Like, what was the inspiration for the show comic-wise, and see how that sort of relates. I'm going to be addressing this point later on, but I think that we have reached a weird era of media where sometimes you can't fully embrace something if you haven't embraced a significant number of other things. And one of the problems that I have with modern media arose with this show, which is that evidently if you've seen the actual extended trailers for the show, which I had not, I tried to go in blind because I think that's sometimes like the best way to do things. I was proven right, because it turns out when you watch trailers these days, they like to spoil things that probably shouldn't be spoiled. Like, it turns out, and we now know this after the second episode, we can perceive it going into the third episode, that we're going to be getting lots of different eras of television sitcoms, and it's going to be bouncing through them as we go forward. If you had never watched a trailer for that, you wouldn't know it. But everyone else in the entire world that saw the trailer is going to be talking about that, and it's going to throw off the discussion of the thing, because I feel like you should be able to participate in a discussion of a thing if you've seen the thing and not external supplemental material. This is actually something that comes up a lot with like the Cosmere. A lot of times people try to have Cosmere discussions. They'll be talking about things that are in the books. They'll be talking about things that are in the short stories. And the answers and theories that seem to come up naturally are oftentimes disproved or clarified or completely changed by things that Brandon Sanderson has said in interviews. This happens incredibly frequently. If you've ever looked up a Cosmere discussion anywhere, this has probably happened to you. It doesn't bother me as much with the comics because this is clearly inspired by one of the comic storylines. People that have read that comic, it's a little bit different. I also don't think that's the majority of people. But if the majority of people have seen the trailer and someone watches this first episode and they're in awe of the mystery and they would have some kind of joy about seeing the way that it evolves over time, but the trailer has told everyone all of that, what the heck are we even doing? Especially when the show seems to have mystery and intrigue as its core interest, frankly, as far as I'm concerned. One of the things that I said in my original 2 videos is I have no idea what the status of Vision was in the MCU. I couldn't remember. It seems to be that he died in Infinity War because his brain thing was the gem for Thanos' gauntlet, and he died there and he never was resurrected in Endgame. So if that's the case, then the prevailing theory of what's going on in this show is that we are living inside of Wanda's mind. More on that later. I also want to make sure that I say this. Just because I call out an opinion that may be in the comments doesn't mean that I'm calling anyone out personally. I love having these style discussions. That's why I post videos on it. That's why I love getting comments about it, because I want to have this dialogue. This is what I live for. And this, when I only post video reviews, especially of books that are old, is what I crave, because a lot of times people haven't read the book or they aren't wanting to discuss it. I love that we're getting this actual real life talking about different things about the show and the medium and different opinions. I love it. I'm not trying to shut anybody out. I am just saying I want to have these discussions, even if you think I'm completely insane and I'm wrong with any of my assertions. I love the fact that we can dialogue about it. That's the awesome part about this whole community. It seems that there was a significant number of people that actually found this show creepier instead of like as kind of cheesy as I put it. For those people, I'm glad that that worked for you, because I do think that that's what they're going for. I think they want the weirdness to come across really strongly when it does, instead of sort of feeling like an afterthought or a teaser to watch the next episode, which is how I kind of felt about it. Clearly, my thoughts on the first episode, where I wasn't sure what the show was going to be, were completely changed after I watched the second episode. So I realized what we're going for now. Now let's talk about comments that I got around my thoughts on episode 2. My friend Pete from Ponderings of Pete, he has a booktube channel, and I think you should go check him out because he has some really insightful things. He's also an extremely big Cosmere nerd. Pete's comments on the show are thus: the camera shots in this show are phenomenal. Pay attention to how the shots are framed. Each of the eras that they have parodied so far has specific camera angles that will typical for the era, but once the shots depart from those angles, the Wanda is quote-unquote broken from the show. But as soon as she's quote-unquote back in it, the camera angles reorient themselves to the era shots. That's what I think I saw. He also says, is Wanda complicit in this? Yes. trauma. Okay, so for the first part of that, absolutely 100,000% true. This is something that I sort of noticed in the first episode, but I wasn't sure what they were going for until I saw the second episode. Once I saw the second episode, it was very clear that that's what they were doing with the camera shots and sort of warping things, changing the music so that you could see the moments when she was being pulled out from whatever this thing is. I do think that that was a interesting execution of that. Additionally, their dedication to trying to keep some of that visual aesthetic the same is pretty cool and commendable. He also reiterates the point that I said, which is it seems that Wanda is complicit in this. More on that later. It looks like there's actually quite a bit of people saying that this all seems to be trauma related, according to them. There seems to be a lot more praise for Elizabeth Olsen's performance. Ben comments, it's interesting to see your reaction. For me, this feels like a thrill ride. It feels like there's a lot of foreshadowing for certain things. Why is everyone saying for the children? That is a cool element. The for the children weird chant thing, the first time it showed up, it just seemed like it was part of the story, and then it came up again. I do think that is an interesting pull. And then it's in the episode she decides to become pregnant. She seems to control the world in some way, so these people are her subconscious. They're influencing her externally like the beekeeper is external. Yes, it does seem that that is the case. Why did she turn to Vision to ask if it was real? Is she asking her illusion to confirm her glamour back to her? It would be like Shallan asking Vale if Vale is real. Stormlight Archive reference. Anyway, I know a lot about this storyline from the books, and I think they're dropping a lot of hints to pay off, like even the Lady Horsehead may be something. I don't remember what that is referencing. I've only seen the second episode one time, but I have seen the first episode twice now. I meant to watch the second episode again, but my daughter had a different opinion. So yeah, those are good thoughts, especially the specific for the children reference. Thank you, Ben, for your comment. Kim says Wanda is probably just imagining this TV land stuff because Vision is dead. Always been a little bit unstable. Another one of the trauma supports. Bucky mentions that the previews have already spoiled some of the information about the next episode. I'm not sure. Are there actual previews in Disney Plus for like the next week on? Because those, I don't count those as the same spoilers as like a weird trailer that just shows everything. So that could be referring to that. Additionally, he mentions some things that may or may not be spoilers to the series based on some kind of weird external stuff. I don't know if the things that he's seeing are all based on things that Disney has shown us, in which case, why make a mystery show if you're going to tell us the answers? Thanks, Disney. Luke Edwards says episode 1 is weird on its own without the second one. He says, I haven't read it, but he thinks that it's based on the comics House of M. I'm going to be looking that up because I would like to check that out. By the way, Luke Edwards also has a channel that's primarily booktube, though he has shared his thoughts on WandaVision as well. You should go check out his review. He is very much in the positive camp of this. In fact, I think he's even throwing spears at some of us Americans for saying some of the stuff was cheesy. I stand by it. So far, there has been at least 2 different comments that talk about how I mentioned, especially in the reaction for the second video of this, that I think that this show is at least like 1/3 parody of the shows that it's sort of homaging as well. And there have been people that say that it is not parody. They don't think it's parody. They think that it is just homage. I strongly disagree with that statement still, and I think that there are individual scenes that are straight up feeling like parody. An homage, to me, this is all opinion based, so I'm not even necessarily like saying they're just wrong, but here's the way that I see it. An homage is something where you're just paying like service to the thing. But the fact that they actually make jokes at the expense of the original medium, to me, is what feels like parody. There's the first episode where the Vision is at his job and there's the whole gag bit where he's like, what do we do here? And they make a joke about working at this office all the time, but they don't actually know what the company even does. That is very much making fun at those old style sitcoms. Additionally, the commercials in both episodes are parodies of commercials at the time, especially that first one. We was talking about the toaster. That is clearly a parody ad. I feel like there are numerous jokes about this in both episodes, but the second episode, the whole gag at the beginning where they're in 2 separate beds to call back to the old sitcoms where they wouldn't allow even fictional married couples to be in the same bed back then. Like that whole way that they pull it all together and they actually imply something went down, something that never really would have gone down in those shows in that era. Those feel like parody to me. So I stick by my opinion that there is a significant amount of parody in these shows. There also seems to be some general pushback on the idea that these are not supposed to be funny. There's a lot of jokes in this show that I think are supposed to be funny. I do think they are supposed to be a little bit corny, maybe a little bit dry, but I think that there are bits in the show that are clearly intended for humor. I don't think the show is supposed to be explicitly just mystery and just thriller or, you know, that kind of whole Lost vibe thing. I really do think they are blending blending like 3 different elements together. The 3 elements I called out previously were actual homage, parody, and the weird mystery thriller elements. Now let's talk about the thriller elements and why they don't necessarily seem to be landing 100% for me at this time. The majority of people, and I sort of agree with them at this point, seem to think that Wanda is experiencing these because of some sort of trauma. She's inside of her own head, and she has created this sort of mock place for her to deal with Vision's death, her brother's death. Is it her brother in Avengers 2? I can't remember. It's originally her brother, but I don't know. They're originally Magneto's kids. The MCU is a little confusing. Thanks, Fox and licensing and all that crap. Anyway, she's dealt with a lot of crap, and so this is a coping mechanism for her. The reasons why I don't love that option is it feels like the plot twist at the end is going to be a flip, and it's just going to be like, it's all just a dream. I don't know how many times that's been done and how many times it generally comes out that that is a horrible decision to make. I realize that there is another element, another layer to it if it's like her living in her own trauma, but really if it all just turns out this is all a self-defense mechanism and other people are trying to pull her out of it to help her, I'm not a huge fan of that at all. And one of the major reasons that I have the problem with the whole show, maybe a little bit in general, is I feel like the gag is supposed to be the draw, and the gag doesn't actually fit with the important elements of the story, if that makes any sense. From what I understand in the MCU, Wanda is basically like she was raised as like a tool by her government. I'm pretty sure she's captured and they have to free her in Avengers 2. At the very least, it sort of implies that she did not have a normal, healthy uprising. I also think that she's supposed to be a certain age that's like younger than her real life age, I think even. So my major problem, if this is some kind of self-defense coping mechanism, is why is she escaping to nostalgic TV Land era television shows as her idealized, internalized escape place? Why is her safe space American television shows if she is a Sokovian person who did not grow up with very much privilege or access to these types of things? That does not fit me. If Peter Quill had gone back and he was living in some 80s television show, that would make sense and I think it would work. The confusing part to me about that, if we want to actually think about the lore on the next level, is why is this her safe space? So if we break away from that, because I don't think that fits in world, if we break away from why this would be her safe space, you say, well, maybe it's not her safe space, maybe she's being kept somewhere against her will. It could be both, like maybe she is being sedated against her will, but this is her safe space. I still don't think that makes sense. I don't think she would have these places to hide herself in. If this is any other explanation that someone is putting her into this television show dimension, it makes zero sense unless you're going for a super actually goofy vibe. Why would someone put her into this television show dimension? Why would someone, an evil villain, put someone into the 60s? Are you going to say like Star-Lord and Ant-Man decided it would be a fun joke to put Wanda inside of this? That could work. It's a humorous plot, but they don't seem to be going for that vibe. Last kind of thing I want to say, just to sort of defend myself a little bit in this, is some of my confusion at the show is not based on what's happening. I realize some of that is supposed to be mystery and thriller. I get it. I want to say, if you are newer to the channel, I have a whole spiel where I talk about how shows like Twin Peaks are my jam. They're some of my favorite things. They are what this show, I think, is trying to be, which is the whole everything seems normal except it's not. There's enough weird stuff and that mystery draws you on. That's Twin Peaks. I love this type of thing. These things are my jam. So I want to say that this is a thing that I am familiar with. I just don't know if it actually blends for me the way that it seems to be blending for lots of other people. This weird homage parody thriller part. Why television shows? Why does it do it? Is it just for gimmick's sake? In which case it's a gimmick and okay, cool, but I don't think it fits the character or the world or the nature of what Wanda would actually do. I nitpicked the comedy a little bit in the show, and I've seen some people try to defend it saying, well, the comedy isn't supposed to land because it's supposed to not be a comedy. I disagree with that assertion, like from jump. And my last major question is, I think that in episode 1, and I don't remember what part, there was a part where I was watching, I don't remember watching it the first time, but in the second time I watched the show, there was a frame where some weird green images appeared on the screen for maybe it was a frame, maybe slightly longer. Has anyone tried to do a freeze frame on that, or was it just a glitch on my video player? Is there actually some kind of hidden frame of data that we haven't mined yet from that episode? Or does that happen again later on? Does anyone have any thoughts on that? I'm curious if anyone has a comeback for the things that I mentioned about why I don't think the TV land aesthetic makes sense for what we're doing. If it just works for you because you actually like the gimmick more than I do, and you think that it doesn't matter that it doesn't fit, that's cool, and I'm so glad that you're enjoying it. For me, I'm just confused mostly by it. When I say that I'm confused in the show, I get that I'm supposed to be confused in the show. Part of my confusion is I don't get why they're doing what they're doing from a larger scale. I know what they're doing. I think I see what they're doing, how it actually fits together, and why that makes sense with the TV land sitcom aesthetic. I think it's just a bold choice. I respect bold choices. I don't think they all land. Anyway, thank you guys so much for having these discussions with me. I love being able to talk about this with everybody while it's still hot. I am still looking forward to Friday's episode because I would like to know if maybe I'm wrong. Hey, maybe this all flips on its head and I'm like, oh dang, I like this show a lot. It's way better than I gave it credit for, and all of you guys were right. Maybe it will go a completely different direction than I was thinking. I would love that. What do you guys think about what I said in this video? Please leave a comment down below. If you like this video, leave a thumbs up. If you think I'm stupid and everything I said is garbage, leave a thumbs down. Please do. If you want to see more videos like this from me in the future, please remember to hit that subscribe button. This is a little bit of a new experiment for me. Generally, I talk about bookish discussion type things, book reviews. If you haven't seen my other videos and this is the first one you're coming to, what are your thoughts on the show? Is it working for you? I've seen some people who it's also not working for comment on the videos. What camp do you fall in? If you would like to discuss WandaVision in more of a actual back and forth direct text option, there's a Discord link in the description down below, and if you jump in that, there is a WandaVision channel where we can talk about WandaVision all the time. You can tell me just how wrong that I am with my assertions and assumptions. Anyway, I hope to see you again on the channel soon. Have a nice day. Bye.
No one ever get enough. Always looking out tired. Sleep. No one ever get enough. If I don't show up, I might get fired. Sleep. No one ever get enough. Always looking out tired. Sleep. No one ever get enough. If I don't show up, I might get fired.